Despite the fact that we're currently in mid-August and free agency has already been open for over a month, there's still some pretty significant names available, including Nazem Kadri, who was one of the biggest names available heading into free agency. Now, there is a lot of speculation going around that Kadri and the Islanders already have a deal in place, however, it just hasn't been announced yet, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. In this video, I want to go over the top remaining UFAs, talk about the players a little bit, what they can bring to the table, and then maybe give some of my speculation on where I think they could potentially sign, what would be a good fit, and how much money they can probably command. The first player that I want to talk about is Sonny Milano, formerly of the Anaheim Ducks. I was really surprised when Anaheim didn't extend a qualifying offer to Milano, letting him walk to free agency because he's 26 years old, he's the youngest player we're going to talk about in this video by a pretty wide margin, and he was coming off the first real breakout season of his career. In 66 games, he was over a half point per game, developed some nice chemistry with Trevor Zegras as the season went along. It really seemed like those two loved playing together. Now, towards the end of the season, Sonny Milano did slump pretty hard. His production took a pretty significant dip, but I feel like when you look at the season he had as a whole, his age, where Anaheim is at as a team, their cap situation especially, I definitely feel like he was at least worth a qualifying offer. The Ducks obviously felt differently though. Maybe there was some behind the scenes problems that we just don't know about, and that's the reason why Anaheim let him walk. But anyways, after he wasn't given a qualifying offer by the Ducks, I really didn't think it would take long for him to get a deal with a new team, but here we are, mid-August, he's still a UFA. However, I can't imagine this is a guy who's just going to go unsigned. He could definitely help out any team that needs a little bit of a scoring touch on the wing in the middle six. I also can't imagine he's going to cost too much either. His cap at this past season was $1.7 million. I imagine it's going to be in that same ballpark when he signs his next deal. Maybe the most I could see him getting is like $2.5 million. But in most cases, when players sign this late into the summer, this late into free agency, they don't get near as much than say if they would have signed with the team when free agency initially opened, because teams spent a lot of their cap space this offseason. I'll throw out a couple of teams that I think would be good fits for Sonny Milano. The Chicago Blackhawks for sure. Maybe they give him a deal similar to the Athanasiou and Domi contracts, 1 year in that $2 to $3 million range. For a team like the Blackhawks, I feel like a 1 year prove-it deal to Sonny Milano would be a no-brainer. Another team that's in a different situation than Chicago that I feel like would be a good fit for Sonny Milano is actually the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, obviously, the Leafs have basically no cap space at all, but who knows? Maybe they would be able to get Sonny Milano to sign a contract similar to the one that Michael Bunting signed last offseason, 2 years, $900K per season, because I feel like the idea of Sonny Milano playing in the top six alongside Tavares and Nylander is very intriguing. The next player that I want to talk about is Phil Kessel, who spent the past 3 seasons as a member of the Arizona Coyotes, 34 years old, obviously well past his prime. However, the 52 points he put up this past season in 82 games is actually the most he's put up in a single year since he was a member of the Penguins. He's definitely still capable of producing offense, more so as a playmaker than a sniper at this point in his career. I feel like in the right situation, Phil Kessel definitely could be an X factor for a contending team, a third line scoring winger, a guy you can roll out there on the second power play unit still for sure. His previous cap hit was $8 million, obviously is not going to cost near as much this time around. I would imagine he may get just a little bit more than a fourth of that, like $2.5, $3 million in that kind of range. If he does sign somewhere, I'd imagine it's only going to be a 1 year deal. The reason I say if he signs somewhere is because given his age and what he's been able to accomplish at this point in his career, and the fact that he's unsigned still in mid-August, you have to think that he's at least considering the possibility of retirement. So he's not chasing his first Stanley Cup or anything like that. He was able to win 2 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. However, there is definitely some significant milestones in Phil Kessel's reach that he could possibly hit this upcoming season if he does sign with somebody. The biggest being breaking the record for the longest Ironman streak in NHL history. He's currently on a 982 game Ironman streak. That's just 7 games behind Keith Yandel's 989 game streak, which obviously ended this past season. And also, he's only 44 points away from hitting the 1,000 career point mark, so you'd have to think that he wants to accomplish both of those things. If I had to guess, I think he will be on a team come October. Alright, so now let's talk about Nazem Kadri a little bit. Obviously, he is far and away the best free agent still on the market. Like I said at the beginning of the video, he was one of the best free agents heading into free agency when it initially opened. If you would have told me heading into free agency that Nazem Kadri was going to take 1 to 2 weeks to actually sign with the team, I would have said that makes sense because he is in a unique situation, 31 years old. Obviously, Nazem Kadri has been a very good player for the entirety of his career, but this past season was the first year where he really broke out and put up superstar numbers. He was 16 points over a point per game. Just for context, Kadri's previous career high prior to this season, 61 points, which again is still very good. He was a 2-time 30-goal scorer before this season as well, but that is a huge jump from 61 to 87, and again, doing it in just 71 games. He also continued to increase his value to increase his stock in the postseason when he put up 15 points in 16 games, including some really gutsy performances, some big moments. Nazem Kadri had every right to demand a lot of money and pretty much whatever term he wanted heading into free agency. So again, like I said, the point I was getting at, if you were to tell me it was going to take him a week or two to sign, I would have said that makes sense, but I don't really think anyone saw this coming, that he'd still be a UFA over a month into free agency. Now again, like I said at the beginning of the video, there has been a lot of reports going around that Kadri and New York have kind of mutually agreed upon a 7-year, $7 million deal. It just hasn't been released yet. That is a very Lou Lamoriello thing to do, but Frank Seravalli has actually shot that report down, and he's one of the most trusted insiders in the game, so I definitely believe him on that. However, I do still definitely think the most likely scenario is Nazem Kadri signing with the New York Islanders. It just makes too much sense. They have the cap space. Lou Lamoriello has never had a problem in the past giving big money and long-term deals to players that are already in their 30s. I also really like the fit when you look at the Islanders lineup as well. The center position, it's incredibly important to be deep at that position if you want to be a legit contender, and when you look at Matthew Barzal, then you have Kadri and Brock Nelson behind him. That's some really good depth, so we'll see what happens if Kadri ends up signing with the Islanders or not, but as of today, officially he is still a UFA, so I had to include him in this video. Next up, we have another veteran centerman. Paul Stastny spent the past couple of seasons as a member of the Winnipeg Jets, 36 years old, has been a very solid top 6 centerman for the majority of his career. At this point, probably not a guy you want as your first or second line centerman, but I think even at 36, he's still capable of being a perfect third line center. A very responsible two-way game, still puts up offensive numbers at a respectable rate. Actually just had his first 20-goal season since 2014 this past season with the Winnipeg Jets. He had 21 goals in 71 games, had a cap hit this past season of $3.75 million. It was just a one-year deal. I could honestly see him signing a deal similar to that one again, and maybe even just re-signing with the Winnipeg Jets on like a one-year, $3 million deal, maybe 2.5, in that range. Another team that I think would be a good fit, maybe the Nashville Predators. I feel like they definitely prove that they still want to compete. They want to make a push for the playoffs this upcoming season, you know, after re-signing Forsberg and then going out and getting the likes of Niederreiter and Ryan McDonough. And now for the fifth and final player we're going to talk about today, and also I forgot to mention, even though you probably figured it out by now, this list was absolutely in no particular order. But anyways, finally we have Evan Rodrigues, who spent this past season as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Big breakout year for Rodrigues, kind of out of nowhere. Like, for the majority of his career, he was just, you know, a fourth liner, someone who wasn't even in the lineup every night. He was on waivers a couple of times in his career as well. And then all of a sudden this past season, boom, he's a borderline 20 goal scorer for the Penguins, had 19 goals, 24 assists, 43 total points in 82 games. Made the most out of the opportunities he got. Definitely slowed down towards the end of the season. Maybe that's what's scaring some teams away from signing him, or maybe Evan Rodrigues is just assessing all of his options and taking his time. You'd have to think by now he'd at least gotten some offers from teams out there. Obviously Evan Rodrigues probably wants, you know, some term on a deal, decent money after the breakout season he just had, but I can see why teams might be hesitant to give him that since his breakout season was so random and came out of left field. Is he going to be a one-year wonder, or is he going to be a guy who actually remains, you know, a decent middle six contributor for the next couple of years? In the end, I feel like he's going to get a one-year prove-it deal somewhere, maybe 2 years max. But this is a guy who, if you end up getting him at a decent price, could end up being a steal, because not only did he put up solid offensive numbers this past season, his underlying numbers offensively and defensively were excellent as well. Very impactful player this past season for the Penguins at both ends of the ice. If he can keep that up, I think any team in the league would love to have him. It's just a matter of if he can actually keep that up and he's not just a one-year wonder. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those were some of the top remaining UFAs on the market. I'm really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on what you think is going to happen with these players. Where do you think they're going to sign? What do you think the contract is going to look like? All that kind of stuff. Leave your thoughts down below. And while you're down there, if you could, please drop a like on the video if you enjoyed. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.